Please be aware of that. We are going to share it out with people who aren't able to make it today. All right. We value your time. We value our time. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm so grateful to Kathy Gray for coming and being willing to share. We've had lots of changes across the board for school counselors regarding all sorts of things that we do. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to Kathy, and we'll go ahead and let her introduce herself and start from there.
Thank you, Bethany. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak to all of you. School counselors are my favorite people in education. I think you're rock stars. Thank you for everything you do for our kids. If anything I can say today helps you out a little, I will consider my time well spent. So thank you for sharing your time with me. In this particular presentation, we're going to be talking about three different things. There's a change to graduation requirements that's coming up for students beginning their freshman year next year. I'm going to give you a little bit of update of how online concurrent enrollment is going, and we're going to touch on HB 191, which is lovingly referred to as the packet bill regarding credit recovery and original credit through packets. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, we are going to tackle HB 191, the packet bill. And I always get, well, why do bills happen? Why do these things happen? We didn't know there was a problem. Why do they think there's a problem? That kind of thing. Well, we often will call them kitchen table bills because somebody is visiting a legislator of some kind, and they often will present a situation they're dealing with at someone's kitchen table, and then all of a sudden there's a bill. So that's what happened with this one. Representative Tusher was receiving some feedback about packets for credit recovery specifically, and he felt like there was a desire from the public that there be more rigor as part of packet credit earning. This happened during the last legislative session. And when was it effective? When were we supposed to be doing this? Well, I'd like to show you a little bit of calendar of events, if I may. And kudos to you, and extra points, a star on your forehead, if you catch what might be a problem here. The first thing was this bill passed on March 26th of 2025. Once a bill is passed and becomes a law, the Utah State Board of Education will look it over and say if they need to change something, update a rule, add additional guidance. That's what they do. And so it went to the Standards and Assessment Committee on June 6th, because that's what happens. You have to go to committee before you go to full board. Well, we went through that, and then they're like, oh, we're going to postpone it. So they had another meeting on June 24th, and it passed committee that this is going to change a board rule. Well, in the meantime, just after that, the legislative effective date was July 1, which meant it became a law on July 1st. It had just passed committee. It then went to the full board in August, because July is a month off for the board. It passed the full board on August 7th, which means whatever the board has now said needs to happen. Well, it can't happen immediately, of course. So effective dates for board rules that pass in August is October 1st. So some of you might have said, wait a minute, the law came into a law before the board has it coming into effect. That is absolutely true. There were so many bills this past session that we actually weren't able to get to them through board rule until after they became an official law. So just a little bit of legislative fun there for you. Who is subject to this bill? Who is required to follow what this bill says? All public LEAs are subject to the requirements of this bill. So that's our charter schools and our schools that are part of districts. This does not affect anything with private schools, homeschools, or any other types of education, just public education. All right, so now we're talking about, all right, this person, Representative Tusher, heard that maybe packets were being done super fast, and he had a concern. So first you have to define what a packet is. That's super important. The definitions are sometimes the most important part of a bill. Well, packet is being defined in this case as a collection of instructional materials and assessments used to receive credit through the packet method. Okay, well, we all know that there are lots of instructional materials and assessments out there, but packets are something that is used through the packet method. Okay, well, what's the definition of a packet method? The packet method is a means or an educational approach where a high school student receives a collection of instructional materials from an institution, organization, or LEA. Okay, so instructional materials. The high school student works through the materials independently with minimal or no direct instruction from a teacher. So that's the second part of the packet method. And then finally, assessment, or how you check to see if that student is competent in the standards, is primarily based on completion of assignments within the instructional materials. That's a really interesting definition right there. I'm actually not going to explain too much more of that because we're going to talk about it a little bit later. But it has to be those three things for packets to be a packet. All right, well, I told you that we have a bill. It gives some guidance, but when it comes to the board can expand on that guidance. So have they given us any additional guidance? Well, yes, they have. They added a definition in R277705. That's the rule where you would go to look for credit earning, transfer credit, that kind of information, that clarifies that credit recovery is the same as replacement credit, because the bill uses the term replacement credit. And right off the bat, everyone was like, grade replacement? Oh no. And it's like, oh, no, no, no. We're so used to calling it credit recovery, but the bill used the term credit or replacement credit. And so there was confusion. So we wanted to make sure that that confusion went away by saying that replacement credit is the same as the words credit recovery, and you don't want to equate this with grade replacement. Packets cannot be used for grade replacements. They never have been able to be used for grade replacement, but we're specifically adding some verbiage in R277717. That's the one about grade replacement. That's the rule about grade replacement, saying packets are not grade replacement. So it's in multiple places now. They went on and gave a little bit more guidance about packets by saying, by adding some criteria. Packets should fully cover the course standards. They should include adequate opportunities for practice and application. They should include a variety of assessments. And then it's consistent with another part of a law that's part of credit earning. Okay, so that is what the board added to what that bill said. So what else might you need to know? Because I know all of you are not necessarily the ones that are going out and doing all the approvals and all that kind of thing. You're helping students. So let's see what information might be helpful to you. Original credit packets can be awarded a grade. If your LEA opts to do that, they are allowed to do that. Remember, it's not grade replacement, but on its own, original credit packets, so the student has never attempted the course before, can include a grade if you want to. It says may, which means you can, but you don't have to. Credit recovery packets are pass-fail only. They should have always been pass-fail, but it is definitely written in multiple places now that it's just recovering the credit. You're not recovering anything else. The original F stays on your transcript, but you can recover the credit. One really important thing that I would love for you all to help out with is to help registrars, if you're not the registrar yourself, help registrars know that there is a requirement starting immediately that we use certain Cactus course codes specific to packets. This is because the bill requires a follow-up of basically how many packets are being used out there, which courses are they using, how many are using original credit or credit recovery or any of those kinds of things. So there is a data element to this. Rather than having each LEA like keep a spreadsheet separate or something like that and having to combine all of it, we have opted to just create some new Cactus course codes that your registrars will need to use starting right now if they possibly can. And they are specific to what type of credit. So Cactus codes are 11 digits long. And you'll see here, I've put in some dashes where all the other numbers will be. The ones that have an 18 in this area, those are going to be the credit recovery packets. and 19 is the original credit packets. So for example, if a student takes a credit recovery language arts 9 course packet to earn the credit, you see the 06, that means it's ELA. 02 means it's foundational. 00 just placeholders. 18 means it's credit recovery, and then 040 tells me that it's language arts 9 instead of language arts 10, 11, or 12. So each digit has a purpose and a reason for it, and 18 and 19 are now our packet situations. Sometimes you have students that go do credit recovery or original packets outside of your LEA. This bill doesn't really impact that. If a student goes to a different accredited place and they finish a packet of some kind and it comes to you in the form of a transcript, transcripts were not covered in this bill in any way. So we handle it just like a regular transcript that comes to you for any other purpose, even if it's just a packet. So if you have a transcript for credit recovery that includes a grade, it shouldn't, and I would love to hear about it so I can go help the people who gave it a grade know a better practice. But if they do, it's a transcript, and we are not allowed to make changes to transcripts. Those things are solid things, right? So whatever you would do with a transcript for any other purpose, do those same procedures for transcripts that involve packets. So out of our 3 sections of this particular presentation, I am finished with the presentation on packets. There will be plenty of time at the end for questions, but are there any questions specific that you'd like to get out now so that we can discuss them? I'm going to pause. Think of any questions you have about packets. You can unmute or put them in the chat. Okay. If something comes up, there's going to be more opportunities to ask questions. All right, let's move on to the next part of this presentation. The instructional materials review process for packets. Now, I understand that you guys aren't typically the ones that are going to do this kind of thing, but sometimes you might end up with an administrator that comes your way and say, hey, this whole packet thing, what do you know about it? And I'd love for you guys to have some resources at your fingertips in case you have someone come your way and say, well, we're supposed to be doing this, but have you heard anything? So first of all of your packets need to be reviewed. There are 2 ways to do this. You can go through your own LEA instructional materials review, or you can submit it to the USBE to review. So on your end, there are 2 places in law that actually sets out what is required for you guys to check your instructional materials. For districts, it is this one here. And for charter schools, it is this one here. They are nearly identical, but slightly different wording and in 2 different places. So it's important to go to where it is that your stuff is. And Bethany, if you wouldn't mind dropping the link to the resource again, all of these are hyperlinked, so you can actually have these at your fingertips if you need them. Let me just go over the main points that if you're going to review your own packets at your LEA, it needs to be an open process. The materials must be posted online for a public review. Now, if you're using copyrighted materials, and I know a lot of you are using third-party vendors, which would be copyrighted, you wouldn't post those to the internet, but they do need to be at your LEA somewhere for parents or stakeholders to come in and view them. That's part of that process. There need to be at least 2 public meetings. And then the adoption through your board, because everyone has a board. If you're a charter school, it's your charter board. And if you're a district school, it's your district board. They have to adopt it in an open and regular board meeting. So not separate board meetings, just a regular board meeting that people know is coming up. Okay. So that's how LEAs can do it on their own. And you have people at your LEAs that do this all the time. If they wanted, however, to have the USBE review them, there is a whole process that if you were to click on the hyperlink here, if you're in the slide deck, it will take you to the Instructional Materials Center that will give you instructions on how to send in packets for review. If your packet is reviewed by the USBE, it would actually be housed on RIMS, which is a repository of instructional materials that have been reviewed and can be recommended for anyone. So any of you who are out in a small LEA and you're like, hey, we actually don't have anything, we would love to go see that receptacle of all of those things because we could just use those. We wouldn't have to do something else. That will be true for the future, but currently no LEA or vendor has submitted anything to the USBE to review. So there isn't currently anything on RIMS that you can just go to and say, hey, I'm going to use theirs because it's been reviewed. I know it's approved. All of that's great. There isn't anything like that currently. Additionally, the USBE created credit recovery packet modules in Canvas. I have had to pull them all off of the Canvas Commons because they need to go through the instructional review process, and they haven't as of yet because the board just finished approving at the 1st of August all of what we're supposed to do anyway. So we're working on that right now. If you have questions about the instructional materials review process, Amber Wright is the specialist at the USBE that handles all of that. If you have any questions about credit earning or packets generally, you are certainly welcome to talk to me. So Amber for instructional materials review, me for additional things. All right, let's move
Kathy,
on.
really quick, there
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
comment in the
Oh,
chat. Is there a difference for packets for traditional high school versus alternative high school versus adult ed, adult high?
that is a really good question. And that's so weird because I don't see anything in my chat. Is that the weirdest thing? Anyway, thank you for checking on that. So, um, original credit would come with instruction. Let's see, both of them come with instructional materials. So, original credit can be awarded a grade. It would be a lot more robust because in credit recovery packets, you don't necessarily have to give a student an entire course of instruction to recover credit. You don't even have to give one grading period if you don't want to. If that student was just having a hard time and they knew some of the standards great and some of the standards they didn't know so great, and all together they ended up not awarding credit, you can just provide instruction and materials and assessments for just the standards the student failed during that grading period. Okay, so there are options. You can customize credit recovery packets. You cannot really customize original credit because it does need to be robust and contain the standards for the course. Adult education actually is pretty interesting. Adult education requires a end of packet assessment. So they allow the student to learn through the packet method, right? But the credit that they award actually comes from a final assessment. So since the credit is attached to a final assessment, passing that, they don't come under the definition of the packet method. And so their materials don't have to go through the review process. And so that's a big distinction there. If your packets are meant to instruct, but completing the packet is not where they are getting their credit, if it's a final assessment, a summative that provides the credit, that is not the packet method. It falls outside of that definition. Now, does the sponsor understand that? Possibly not, actually, because the whole point was rigor and all of that kind of thing. So stay tuned to the next legislative session because I have this distinct feeling that that person might go back and tighten up some of that legislation. But for right now, if your packets, what you call packets at your school, your LEA, don't have the parts of the packet method, then it is not a packet using the packet method and does not need to be reviewed at this time. Let's see, if we are using the assessment portion like adult example, do we still need to use the newly created Cactus codes? Fabulous question, Heather. Yes. What the sponsor would like to know is to have data on the levels that students are using packets to earn credit, whether to recover it or to earn it in the first place. And actually, I'm quite fascinated about this too. We really have never checked to see what is the rate at which students are using this, and why are they using them at those rates, and how can we help? So yes, please, even if it's not a packet through the packet method, if a student is recovering credit or doing an original credit through packets styled items, please still use those cactus numbers because we just want to get a general idea. Thank you for that question. Other questions? Okay, I'm glad my chat started up. That was awesome. Okay, let's move on to the next section. This one is about graduation requirement changes that are coming up. In the 2025 legislative session, Rep. Welton introduced HB 381. Let's see, Candence, is Edgenuity considered a packet method? It might. I'll loop back to you at a question part, so it might. With the HB 381, Rep. Welton has added another formal requirement to graduation. He has increased the social studies graduation requirement from 3.0 to 3.5 credits, beginning with your freshman class of 26-27. So this doesn't apply to anybody this year, and it's only going to apply to your freshman next year, and then your sophomore and freshman the year after that. And then your junior, sophomore, freshman, we're just going to add a grade level each time as that cohort moves up. 3.5 credits of social studies, and one of those is required to focus on American constitutional government and citizenship. Well, we have something similar to that, don't we? So, although it says 1 credit at the code level, the legislative level, the board is interpreting that and saying, hey, we already have U.S. Government and citizenship. We already have a half a credit. So what we're going to do to allow students to have flexibility in their schedules, instead of having another full year course, we're going to meet that requirement in the law by having another half a credit course that's going to focus specifically on all the items that were added by the law. So the two put together, so the U.S. Government and Citizenship course that we already have, and then the new half credit one that is being developed, those together meet the 1 credit in law, but it allows students to stack things a little bit differently, which is super helpful, I think. You guys are the experts, but as I thought about it, I'm like, that seems like a good idea. These are going to be requirements. This is not a student choice option or an LEA option. The LEA option is still just half a credit. So we now have 3 foundational credits, 1, 1, and a half that are absolutes. And then there's that half a credit that has always been an LEA option that's still available. Let's see, is the USBE going to consider removing the LEA option course in social studies? I don't know. I have not heard anything like that. So I'm going to have to just say I'm ignorant in that, Jason. I'm so sorry. All right. So the course hasn't been created yet. And in the law, I've actually put a quote if you're interested in reading it. We're not going to be developing this ourselves. The law says that we have to develop it in collaboration with the Civic Thought and Leadership Initiative at UVU. That's what the law says. That is what we will do. But that is just barely getting started because it takes about a whole year to get the standards written and a course code number done and all of those kinds of things. Let's see. Link to bill wording. Oh, excuse me. I'm just reading my own thing. Oh, if you are interested in seeing the wording specifically from the bill about the content that is required or the prioritization of documents, I've put those links there. It's super fascinating. I've never seen a law actually list the documents that a teacher should have and teach from. So this is a very interesting thing. If any of you are social studies and policy geeks like me, it's very interesting that at a legislative level, they are setting out what should be taught within a course of instruction. So it's there if you'd like to go read it. There is also, as part of this, a new verbal communications credit options for social studies. Those of you who've been around the block a little bit remember that I think it was 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we had a verbal communications credit that could provide students with a half credit of the fourth language arts credit, a half of it. And it would be through a course or school-sponsored activity that emphasize verbal communications. And we actually have a document specifically for that already ready for the ELA. That's been around for a year or two. It's here at the bottom. You can click on that and go see it. So currently, we are developing a guidance document in conjunction with creating this new course that is going to give direction on how you would give a student social studies credit from a school-sponsored activity that emphasizes verbal communication. And my best example for that is like debate, right? Something like that. We were using that for ELA. This one is going to be based on verbal communications with a policy analysis involved, government systems, civic engagement, or if you have a student that's participating in the Junior Reserve Officers Training Corps, they can receive half a credit of social studies. I just asked the social studies specialist yesterday, can it count for any of the 3.5 or just the half that's kind of its own thing? At this time, it's just the half. If new legislation comes to change that, I'll let you know. Remember, this doesn't apply to anyone this year. So, things kind of have to settle. But at this time, it's being interpreted that it would just be that half that's LEA/student choice that this could apply to. Okay, let's see. There we go. There's the language arts verbal communications link if you're interested in seeing. It will look very similar to that. Standards have to go through the board. So these aren't standards. These will be competencies because it's a school-sponsored activity, which is different than a course of instruction. So if you're interested in what it will possibly look like, most likely look like, you can click on that to see. If you have questions specific to social studies and not just graduation requirements, you can go ahead and get a hold of Robert Austin. He's the person that would be an excellent contact there. You can still also contact me, and if I don't have the answer, I'll just pull Robert into the conversation. So I'm kind of a one-stop shop, but you are absolutely welcome to always go straight to the content specialists. Let's see.
Kathy,
Liz
I
asked,
have a direct message.
Yes.
Can you explain Government and Politics Concurrent Enrollment 1100 and what that looks like, and if that will cover the extra credit for the requirement with the bill or not?
Was it specific to 1100, not 1700?
Government and
Okay.
Politics.
Government
1100,
politics.
not U.S.
I'm gonna
History
have
1700.
Thank you. 1700 is the one that always comes to mind when there's something weird, right? Because that's the one that has to be a full year versus. I'm going to have to claim ignorance on that. I do not know what courses are going to be able to count towards this new one. Robert is a very intelligent man, and common sense tells me that we have other courses that can count towards foundational courses throughout all of graduation requirements. I would expect that either the content at the CE course level will add that to make it an option for students, or that the standards will be set up such that it could. That is not an absolute. I am not the person who does that kind of thing, but there are things that count. There are college level courses that count towards foundational graduation credit for every other subject area. I would imagine that this would be no different than the others, but we will have to wait and see if it's CE 1100 specifically. I hope that's.
So Kathy, it does
Yeah.
count for the U.S. government as far as that 0.5. I guess
Okay.
the question is, will it count for the other 0.5 where you're saying there's the specific documents that Representative Welton
That's a
put
good
in?
question.
Yeah, so that's something we need to find out and get that sent out to school counselors within the next year or so
With it,
before the
yeah.
26, 27.
For sure. I'm actually, and I appreciate knowing that course exists. I don't know every course that exists out there. I try. Um, but I will actually take that to Robert and say, hey, we've got a situation where a CE class counts for half of that two halves that are needed. Are you going to update or work with the universities to make sure that these are taught so that it can count for both? So I appreciate knowing that that already exists, and I will bring it to his attention. He probably already knows because he's smarter than me, but I'll bring it to his attention in case it has not been thought of. Let's see, Heather or AP Gov, same thing. We'll have to see if they teach the standards that are developed for the new course, it absolutely would, right? Because we give credit based on competency and standards, not just the title of a course. So we'll just have to see how that plays out, and I will make sure I get information to Bethany as soon as information is there to be had. And Heather, thank you so much for answering Candace's question. I appreciate that. Other questions before I just give you a little update on how online concurrent enrollment is going?
Kathy, real quick, I think I
Yeah.
asked a comment. And so right now, the for graduation, we don't need to do the civics test any longer. So anybody that is in high school won't get the civics test or this other course, right?
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Yes. Although it takes time to develop the course, the civics test requirement is now gone immediately
Okay.
as of July 1 for high schoolers. This is something that's really important. And Liz, I'm so glad you brought that up. You've just been absolutely fantastic today. Thank you. If you have a student that might not make it to the finish line and get that diploma, adult ed still requires it. So it's kind of interesting. They didn't think of adult ed when they were making this situation. And so adult ed packets fall outside of that instructional material review, but also they only took out the wording that required the civics test for high schoolers. They left it in for adult ed. Don't know if that was on accident or on purpose or what, but students should know that, hey, if you're thinking of moving into the adult ed world, going that direction, you're gonna still have to take that test where you wouldn't have to if you got it done here. So thank you for that. Other ones? You're welcome, Liz. Thank you. Other thoughts about this? This is a fire hose of information. Thank you for sticking with me. And I will be here once this meeting ends. I will be here to answer questions for anyone who would like to stay, or I love it when counselors call me. So we can connect there too. Let's go ahead and do the online CE, okay? This one has been kind of bumpy in 2024, so not this last legislative session. There were two bills, and I always wonder if people talk very much during sessions because we had two bills that both dealt with concurrent enrollment being taken online. HB 493 was about taking online courses, CE courses directly through a university, contracting with a different university if a student wants it specifically online. But HB 247 was talking about SOEP specifically. And although concurrent enrollment has always been an option in the SOEP, there were technical difficulties that didn't allow us to ever offer it. So it's always been able to be, but computers made us not be able to for a while. So right now, actually, I'm going to go back so that I don't focus on something different. Sorry. 493 allows that if a student comes to you and says, I really want to take CE blah, blah, blah online, and your service area institution of higher learning does not offer it online, an LEA is required to go out and make a contract with a higher ed institution that does have it online if it exists anywhere. If it doesn't exist anywhere online, the student just needs to take it in person if they're going to take it, right? If your service area institution of higher education does offer it online, the student must take it from them. They they can't go to another institution just because they wanted it a different institution. There's still that right of first refusal situation for this as well. This particular person was concerned that sections fill up, and they were hearing that students were having to have kind of a lottery system to get the last seats and different things. And he's like, if I put it online, there'll be enough for everyone. Not realizing that higher education institutions are the ones that set the enrollment caps for each section. And so you can actually still run out of section seats, even if it's online, right? The modality doesn't change that. And so there could definitely still be a situation where sections fill up, and maybe your online section through your partnering institution is full. At that point, you would try to facilitate that with a different higher ed institution. That being said, I've been in, I go to a monthly meeting with the concurrent enrollment coordinators at each of the higher ed institutions. And these one-off situations are not meeting what they would like to have happen. And so they might say no. Your requirement is to try and facilitate that contract. If they say no, we are not going to accept a student, we're not going to make a new contract. Once again, the student will need to pursue other avenues. At one point, I had thought that because LEAs are required to contract under these certain circumstances, that it meant the higher ed institution was required to accept. That is not how they are interpreting it at this time. So if you run into a situation where you're like, the student needs me to help them facilitate this by making a contract and things are going a little bit weird, feel free to get a hold of me and I'll do what I can, and I'll try to keep that communication open if it breaks down at all. Okay, so your job to try and facilitate. If they say no, the answer is no at this time. So the SOEP is a different matter though, right? It's not contracting specifically with a higher ed institution. The online programs and schools, and they're called online providers when they work with the SOEP, they already have their own contracts. So a student who goes through the SOEP to take a course, a concurrent enrollment course, is going to be using that provider's higher education institution. Let's say you partner with Weber State, but also the online school partners with Weber State. Does the student still need to fill out the online permission form in order to do this? The answer is yes. Even if you have the same service area institution that you both have, the data needs to flow correctly. We need to be able to know that this student is taking it through Mountain Heights or Davis Connect. Those are the only two online schools working with the SOEP at this time. We need to know that this student is taking it from here, but the CE funding that comes through a legislative appropriation still flows to your LEA. The rules for that is that whoever primarily bears the cost of instruction is the one that receives that CE add-on funding. Well, your LEA is paying the SOEP provider for this service, so you are still primarily bearing the burden of instruction. So that CE funding comes here. So it's very important that we have things going the correct direction. The participation form, Dawn, can be done multiple times. If the student is taking it from a new, if the instruction is coming from a new LEA, or the institution, higher ed institution changes, either one of those scenarios means a new one. Okay, so if a student, let's say you partner with Snow, okay, Snow doesn't have any online whatever, so your student wants to take something through Mountain Heights, and maybe Mountain Heights partners with Slig. I'm not sure actually, so I'm just going to make it up. I apologize. I've got a chart for it. Let's say they do that, but then they take something through Davis Connect also and do Weber. You now have 3 different higher education institutions that this student is taking concurrent enrollment from. Each one of those situations requires that parent permission form or the online permission form to be filled out. There's a new question on there that it says, what is your primary district or LEA or whatever. They still choose that one as they normally would. But then there will be a question that says, will you be taking the course through the SOEP? Something like that. If they select yes, a new menu will open and they will be able to choose between Mountain Heights Academy or Davis Connect. Then that means that the next page will only show the institutions that work with Mountain Heights if they take that route, or Davis Connect if they take that route. Okay, so each one of these situations requires the student to think about who's giving me the instruction, put it there on that first page, so that the institutions will open up secondarily that they can select from. Carrie, I wish I had a slide with that info. I'm going to do my best to get it. I've requested screenshots from Yushi 3 different times over the past 4 months. I can't actually get in them because I don't have a student to be able to put in. So I need them to provide me with some screenshots so that I can get this for you. I think the SOEP has a flow chart that can help. I tried to help. I developed a partial one to give to them. Let me see if I can find that. Heather, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just real quick, Kathy, thank you for this
Yeah.
information. So we are seeing an influx of this at Ogden School District, specifically through the SOEP program. And I am just wondering what the level of accountability is on the SOEP providers as far as ensuring that students know how to fill out the participation form and to fill it out correctly. It seems that often our parents become confused when talking to someone from SOEP and they get misinformation, and it's a bit of a mess for us right now. We're working through it, but I know that participation form is already a bit of a barrier for a lot of our students, and this just adds another complicated step. So
It is. And Heather, I absolutely acknowledge it. You guys are taking the brunt of this because when students hear about that, they go to their counselor first, which is what we want. But also, do you have the tools that you need? And the answer currently is you don't have really great tools right now. So let me do a couple of different things. The SOEP, as the program housed at the USBE, are directing students totally to Davis Connect or Mountain Heights Academy because they're actually the ones that understand their processes the best. Like they could tell a parent on the phone which institutions they work with or various things like that. So getting the student through the registration process has been turned over to those 2 entities as they are the closest to the student between the USBE and the student. Does that make sense? They're closer to the student than the USBE is, right? But I do absolutely acknowledge that students are coming to you and you're like, I don't know. Jenny, I said you're actually center in my screen, Jenny. So Jenny is with Mountain Heights Academy. So Jenny, do you want to actually unmute or do you want me? I'll give you that option.
Yeah, I'm fine to do that. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I'm so
Okay.
glad you're here.
Yeah, sure. So, so this has been new for all of us, obviously this year. I can speak for Mountain Heights. So once a student requests a CE course on the SEATS website, that signals to us, and I'm the person that does it through Mountain Heights. I send out a document to the student and the parent that goes through step by step, and it shows screenshots of that USHE form and shows them what to do. Now, we all know they don't all read it. They don't all follow those instructions. So we've learned that some students still have errors and different issues. Most of them end up calling me as the contact at Mountain Heights, and I've walked many through them. So just know we are willing to walk through that and help those students with those steps because we were also on a timeline to get them all registered as well. So
yeah, it was bumpy. It was nip and tuck there. And Jenny, whatever magic that you were able to get those screenshots through, send some of that magic my way because just asking for it isn't working.
Well,
so
do you know what worked for me is I used my own child as a guinea pig. So as a parent, I went in to do her and I took screenshots along the way.
Okay, okay, because I'm just like, how did you get it? I've been begging on my hands and knees. All right, Mountain Heights rocks it again. Thank you. Heather, you've got your hand up, and I bet you it's for Jenny. So go ahead, Heather.
It is. Jenny, that's wonderful that you guys do that. Thank you. This is a question for Jenny, but maybe Kathy, you know as well. Do the concurrent enrollment rules still apply? So for example, I had a ninth grader wanting to do SCOP. My counselor did all of the right things, aligned to the 4-year graduation plan. Parent left knowing they were going to sign up for 2 courses. This was in May, and then, or over the summer, and then got on the SOEP website to do all the things and saw all of these wonderful concurrent enrollment classes that they had the option to take. Signed this ninth grader up for English 1010, English 2015, math 1010. And it was over the summer, so my counselor wasn't regularly checking the emails, didn't get a chance to reject it. So I don't know if SOEP or the providers are thinking about providing a little bit more guidance on when it is appropriate. Obviously, our counselors do their very best and counsel the parent, but sometimes these things happen and they get excited about all the options. So is there a way to block that based on the grade level, or I don't know. It's just another thing that we're seeing.
Yeah, I have a lot of those answers, but I think Jenny might have them all. So Jenny, why don't you go ahead and jump in?
Yeah, so I will say, at least for Mountain Heights, we partner with Utah Tech University, and they have requirements for their courses. So we did have many students sign up. The most common one was English 10. They signed up for English 1010. Well, they're not eligible. So we had to decline many students. And so we are responsible for getting a copy of their transcript to prove that they have a 3.0 grade point average. And then many courses have a prerequisite. So for example, for English 1010, they have to have an ACT score or an AccuPlacer score. And so there were many students that I reached out to. With the new change with English 11 also being required, I was also reaching out to many students over the summer saying, you can't even take this for English 11. So we are watching those as best as we can and letting those students know and rejecting those requests. It was a project, and I think it will be easier next year, but we were gatekeeping, I guess, if that's the right word to use. We are gatekeeping those courses and making sure, because Utah Tech won't admit them unless they meet those requirements, and they had to show us proof of meeting those requirements.
And since Jenny also was mentioning the English 11 situation, that was pretty interesting because Yushi said this is a prerequisite for all, and so we removed it from our stuff so that I thought it meant that counselors weren't using it because it's been a requirement for 2 years at the Yushi level, but found out that at 3 different institutions were still allowing it, right? So that was bumpy. That was really, really bumpy. So you might encounter differences depending on, Mountain Heights partners with Utah Tech. I think Davis Connect partners with Weber, I think, at least. I think some of you all out there have multiple contracts depending. But anyway, there are some differences for sure. And there was a question in the comments about who is responsible for keeping the student under 30 credits a year. That one is a big because the whole point of the right of first refusal was to make sure they knew where students were going, right? The student from this LEA, if we're not providing it, we'll go ahead and do the right of first refusal, let them go over here. But now we know that we shouldn't be seeing any enrollments over here, right? And we were still having some kids slip through because they were doing different things, right? They were direct enrolling, they were doing various stuff, and they were being over 30 credits. That has inched up year by year. We have our eyes on it, but this year is going to tell us a lot because these students are going to be taking it, like I said, if you're partnering with somebody, Mountain Heights is partnering with somebody else, and Davis Connect is partnering with somebody else, each one of those may end up in a situation where they over-enroll. And so we do know that that is a weakness in the system because we haven't changed it for online, right? But right now, we don't have an absolute solution for that. This year, we're just going to monitor it, if that makes sense. Let's see, Beth, you said that there was a list of SOEP classes and it was very helpful. I will see if I'll get a hold of the SOEP and see if they have one for the 25-26 year and get that to Bethany. Did I miss what university? Okay, I think I got everybody. You're welcome, Beth. And yes, Heather, the counselors at Mountain Heights, or Jenny at Mountain Heights, she is the first and last. And over at Davis Connect, they have been working their hearts out, trying to get all of this. And to let you know, if a student enrolls over a summer, CE doesn't start until fall. So those summer registrations, those we can still deal with. You don't have to go, oh, we missed it because it happened over the summer. You can contact the SOEP. You know, at Mountain Heights and Davis Connect, they have their eyes on that as well. So don't give up just because it's summer, because nothing's actually happened yet. All right, we are nearing the end. Yes, great, Bethany. Yes, Carrie, those are the only two at this time. Canyons Virtual started out to participate, but wants a little bit more time. So they have pulled out. You might see Canyons Virtual show up as an option for second semester. I believe, and Jenny, tell me if I'm wrong, but semester 1 is now closed for enrollment for both providers. So no more semester 1 enrollments. Semester 2 is open for enrollment. I do not know the withdrawal dates. And maybe Jenny knows because she's co-presenting and she didn't even know. What's the withdrawal date?
So we have to go by Utah Techs, and so our withdrawal date without a W is September 10th. So that's something we have to make sure these kids understand. The SOEP gives them 20 school days, and so that date is later than what Utah Tech does with the no W. So we are pushing for the CE courses September 10th. That could be different for Davis because they are through Weber State.
Yeah, and that's why it's so different. And so when it comes to SOEP and concurrent enrollment rules, code, policies trump all of them. We have to follow the CE stuff. These are secondary. Okay, so that withdrawal date is all important. If a student can't withdraw, that's a problem because the grades have to match. And there isn't a pause in concurrent enrollment. There is only F. So those kiddos need to understand that if they choose it, it's not like in the SOP where it says, oh, you have till your senior year to get all this done. You could rejoin at any time. That is not so with concurrent enrollment. Let's see, these were accurate as of last week. So this might have changed, but this is kind of where we're at with participation. It's a soft start. Thank goodness, because if we were getting thousands upon thousands, this would be a much different conversation. But it seems to be, you know, a smattering of students across the state participating. Once again, semester 2 is still open for both. Will the SOEP schools be posting the failing grade to the transcript that matches the grade at the university? Yes, because they're the ones offering the instruction. They're the ones that create the transcript. They'll be the ones to show that, and then the transcript will come to you as it always has, and you will place it on there. All right. If you have questions about SOEP, I won't have all of you call Jenny, although she's fabulous. I've worked with her for years. I just love her. You can contact Cynthia White, who is the SOEP person at the USBE. She will have system-wide information. If you're looking for tips and tricks, I'd go to my friend Jenny because she's awesome. Always feel free to get a hold of me. I do not know everything, but I love to connect people that do. So if you need anything, I'm a one-stop shop for anything to connect you to somebody here at the USBE that can help. And that is all the information that I'm pushing out today. But I am open for questions. For those of you who are like, I gotta go, I've got lunch duty, I wish you a fabulous day. Thank you so much for everything you do for kids. Counselors rock, you're my favorite people. And I will see you again soon. For those of you who would like to stay and listen to the questions and the answers, please feel free to stay. I will stay on here as long as there is a person here with questions. Bethany?
Just really quick, Becky, you said Utah Online School offers CE and partners with UTU. Yes, we were talking about SOEP programs specifically. So just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, Becky, and thank you, Bethany. Yes, the different online programs and schools that work with the SOEP, many of them have concurrent enrollment for their own enrolled students. SOEP is specific for those a la carte situations where a student is primarily enrolled here, but they're just taking those a la carte classes through the SOEP. Utah Online is opting to not participate through the SOEP, but yes, they do offer CE through their own to their own students, and there might be other contracts that they have outside, but it's not through the SOEP. Carrie, a registrar, and you need to know how to create codes. You betcha. I will get you in contact. It's going to be your data specialist at your LEA. Could you tell me which LEA you're with, and I'll just I'll have my data person reach out to your data person to make sure that you can get some assistance. Skyridge. Is that, oh, my pen just ran out. Is Skyridge a charter or are you
Alpine.
with
They're with
Alpine? Okay,
Alpine.
thank you. Thank you. Alpine Skyridge. Needs training. Okay, I will make sure that someone reaches out to you for that information, Carrie.
Well,
You're
we want
welcome
to
to come
thank
off mute.
Kathy. Yeah, I want to thank Kathy while we have a minute before everybody hops off. She is so fabulous. I reach out to her regularly with questions because as school counselors, we are supposed to know everything for everybody. So she is fabulous to work with. She's great. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to her. And otherwise, we'll stay on for just a couple more minutes. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day. I will be sending this out on the school counseling listservs next week. As well as with the slides. So you will have access to that. Have a
Thank
great
you,
rest of your
everybody.
day.
Jenny, you're the best. Thank you for being willing to open up and provide that because I'm like, oh.
You bet. No
I
problem.
miss working with you every day. I miss you.
No, thank you. It was very good.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Jenny.
Okay, Kathy, I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting.
There any, because I'm the type of person that I stay as well to see if other people have questions.